Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. I've been back from my vacations for about a week now, and since then have been working on my Fractal Ray Merger again. I just wanted to quickly show you the new features that I've added. And as you can see, there's quite a few new things going on here now. Let's go over them one by one. The most noticeable change is probably that the fractal is now colored. And to do that, I just basically use the algorithm described in @CodePirates video about fractals. The link to that is again in the video description. So watch that if you want some more detailed information about that. But in short, to get the color of a point, I just iterate through all the transformations again and record the maximum x, y, and z values the point ever had after an iteration, and then just use that as my RGB color vector. And that's working pretty well. Doesn't work for all fractals, so sometimes they are just completely white, but for most of them it works pretty good. I'm happy with that. I've also added some more parameters to the fractal formula, by the way. So now you can not only control the rotation and scale of each of the smaller copies of the fractal, but also the position. As you can see, if I change the slider, you can kind of see the top and bottom half of the fractal kind of sliding into each other and disappearing, or moving right from each other and giving room to new parts of the fractal below it. It gets kind of buggy if these sliders are all up very high, but for lower values that works just fine. And also whether these are all 1 or all 0.5 doesn't really change anything about the fractal. It's just about the proportions between them. So that's really not an issue. Then another thing I added is an option to switch to a completely random fractal. And that's what this button here is for. And I've also made it so it slowly transitions to that new fractal over a period of time, which you can also adjust here. So right now that was 3 seconds, but I can also change this to 10 seconds, and then it will just take that amount of time instead of the old one. Sometimes the fractal can disappear entirely, but then you can just generate another one again and it should hopefully reappear. That's when these sliders go too far into the negative, then the fractal gets just lost basically. I've also added an option to repeat this animation basically indefinitely. So if you activate that over here, it just starts a new transition whenever the old one is halfway complete. So in this case, the transitions would take 10 seconds, but then a new fractal, a new transition basically starts every 5 seconds. So that kind of continues in the cycle then until this is deactivated again, then just completes the last transition and stops. You could now use this as, I don't know, a screensaver or something. It would probably just make your graphics card if you leave it running for too long, but it looks pretty nice, I think that's pretty good. By the way, one thing to note here is that I've also made the camera move to kind of stay in place relative to the part of the fractal it's closest to. And that's a little bugged out when transitioning at such high speeds, so you need to kind of stay away from it. But if I increase the animation length to something like 500, so it moves really slowly. So actually, let's get a slightly more interesting fractal. Like this, then you can see as I move to something over here, I don't really move relative to the part of the fractal I'm closest to this, but I can see all the other parts of the fractal moving in the distance. So I think that can be used to get some pretty cool camera shots or whatever. My graphics card sadly isn't fast enough to render this to a video in higher resolution like this without any lag. But I think if you had some faster hardware, this could lead to some very interesting results. You need to be a little careful, however, because it doesn't always work that well. So sometimes you can just end up being crashed into the wall basically when the fractal comes at you from both sides. So yeah, I think you can see this right here now. Let's do it a little more. Yeah, there it was. In that case, to get back out of the wall again, you can just reload the page, and that will stop the transition and also reset the camera position, but it will leave all the fractal parameters intact, so you're still looking at exactly the same fractal, and can also quite easily get back to where you were. So yeah, that also works. By the way, in case you come across an interesting fractal and want to take a screenshot of it, I've also now implemented a proper screenshot tool. So where before you had to kind of turn down the pixel size and then set the size of the screen to what you want and potentially zoom out because this window isn't large enough for that or something, you can now just enter the screenshot size, the image size you want down here, and hit the button take screenshot, and then that screenshot will open in a pop-up right here, so then you can just click on save image or just directly view the image in your browser, and yeah, that should work fine. You can also use this to take some pretty large screenshots, so for example something like 5760 pixels times 3240 pixels, that's 3 times my actual screen size. Just works in a couple of seconds. Interestingly, the browser takes longer to process this screenshot and display it than takes to render it. So even after the pop-up is there, you still need to wait a few seconds until you can actually view it in your browser. At least in Firefox that's the case. But yeah, as you can see, there's really a lot of detail in here, so that can also be used to get some pretty interesting images. You need to be a little careful with this, however, because if you make a screenshot so large, also complicated in regards to fractal formula, that it takes longer than I think 2 seconds or something like that to render, the browser will just cancel it. As for example, this here will just, I don't know, would take 10 seconds or so, but then the browser thinks you're trying to crash it, so it just, that actually worked. That's interesting. So yeah, what would have been expected is basically that browser would lose the WebGL context in this case, and that would crash the page. It didn't in this case, but just be aware that this is also something that can sometimes happen. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. The link to this is again in the video description, so if you want to play around with these fractals a little bit yourself, check that out. It's on my GitHub page. Also feel free to leave a comment if you have any suggestions or anything. Basically any feedback would be highly appreciated. And yeah, besides that, thanks for watching, and see you next time, I guess. Bye.